Hello there and welcome. This is Weekends Web App and we are on to day 20. This is the stream where we're building a complete web app from start to finish. And this one's going to be a little surreptitious. I got the kids sleeping downstairs and they may wake up, I don't know. We'll see how we go. And I'll just keep on burning through this until I either finish with my test writing or something means that I have to stop the stream. And we'll go from there. Either way though, we're pretty much just going to pick up where we left off from last stream. If you would like to pick up with the code right where we left off, then you'll want to use Git to check out day 19, because that's where we finished. Anyway, let's get our various bits and pieces up and running. We'll put gulp up into another page. And then we will dive into our code. So last time we got stuck. We got a little stuck because we were dealing with testing our dealing with testing our IndexedDB sort of layer, and we were just running into some issues there in terms of, well, it was more my understanding more than anything of how it was holding down connections. But we got past that, so now we can do a few more tests just to deal with the rest of the things that we need to do with this sort of this database storage layer. So let's pull that open. So we've got the initiation. We can get rid of these console logs, we don't need them. So this initialization process is fine. We'll probably eventually go to a degree of sort of testing with the sort of the schema and stuff like that, but for the moment we'll probably just keep it simple. There's a lot of things that we could be testing in this layer, and we'll certainly want to eventually be really well founded all the way through it, but I think that's gonna, again, we're gonna have to use it in anger a bit more just to make sure that all of our functionality is exactly where we need it to be. So this is more going to be a verification that things work as we expect it to, because very shortly with this code that we've got in app.ts, where it actually exercises the layer, all of that code's going to go soon so that it can pave the way for our actual application data. And we're not going to get that if we're not going to get that sort of testing anymore here. So we need to move that testing out into this like actual test library. We'll focus down onto database storage, so it's not running the tests for everything else, and then we'll just sort of get into things. So for the moment, I guess I'm happy with just bringing our tests into these various areas here. I think that'll do just fine. So next up, we're going to describe, I guess, migrations. Yeah, we'll test that we've actually got all the migrations and test that all of the things that were meant to be there based on the schema are actually there. That'll work a treat. So let's jump into that. And again, we're going to need to remove the test database after we're done. And even though, I mean, we could do something cleaner where it doesn't actually do that, but this is nice and low verbosity. If it breaks, then we'll probably know about it. So I'm kind of fine with using something we're testing in the after hook. So if we look at our schema, not that schema, I meant this schema. If we look at our schema, we've got some stores that get added and some indexes that get added. And I guess it would be nice to just have some code that verifies that these things do actually take place. So hopefully we can get a list of all the object stores, and we can get a list of, after we get a list of all the object stores, we can just check things out. And check out that all the indexes are there and all that the stores are there. And that's pretty much all we'll do for now. So we'll just go it adds stores successfully. As I said, we could fully exercise this with lots of dynamism and all that sort of thing, but I sort of want to avoid that just for now. And maybe we'll have it actually define the schema here, because this looks like one of those cases where we sort of want to be clear about that. And if I recall, this schema doesn't actually get used. It's just the migration. So we could probably get away with just a little dummy schema here. Like if we did something like created ourselves a little test schema here. We called it, let's see what we call it. So we'll give it a name. We'll call it migration test. And we'll make sure this matches the name. We'll do that there. And then we'll define our migrations, which is an array of objects. Looking at the top right, if you're looking at where I'm checking here. Array of objects with an actions object, and there we go. We've got everything we need, and we just need to put things inside of it. And where can we get that from? I'm going to need to use that information, so I'll just define that stuff up there. Right, so if we add store, I'm just going to pull these in just for now, even though like that testing data is something sort of bigger. I'm just going to pull this in for now, and that way that's just going to speed me up for now, and that's all there is to it. Right, so we'll call this migration test schema. And then we'll initialize the database. And then after that, what we need to do is actually test it based on something that sort of looks like this. But yeah, we initialize the DB. We can't use then on DB, unfortunately. But what we could do is close the connection, because that'll mean that like sort of like that does then. So we could go close connection on it. So yeah, we could do this. We could return close connection, and then because that close connection as a function returns a promise, that's going to give us everything we need to do sort of our own testing from there on. So here we open it our own way, not relying on the library at all. And we can use, we know that it's going to be a version 1 because there's only one migration. So maybe just to make that association a bit clearer so we never accidentally break the tests, we could put in migration test schema dot migrations dot length, because that'll match our version number. Right, so now once we've done that, we need to jump into request.onSuccess. And what do we got here? We'll have an event, an any event. And this is sort of where we need to do our test and sort of resolve our test, I guess. So if we resolve true, then that's all good. But let's do a console log on event.target.result, because that's our database object that we actually need to take a look at. So if I bring the tests open and we do a reload, so we're going to have our, like it resolves, so it'll come back as true. But you can see our migration test database just here. And we've got our object store names. So theoretically, we should have all of the stores that we would need there. Although that seems empty, so potentially what we're looking at is a case where it's initialized, and then maybe I'm looking at a reference here that's maybe old. So let me just drop in a debugger, and I'll see if we've got something going not quite right on here. Because we do, yes, we do also, after we do that, we need to go event.target.result.close. So we do need to cancel that connection when it gets to the end. We already learned that lesson last time. Alright, so if we look at event.target.result down here, we've got our version, object store names. So according to this, there are no object stores that have come into play, and that's probably not quite right. We should have had those object stores get created during these migrations. And if we look at console log, we can see that it went through these and did that particular process. And yet we do not have any object store names in there. So let's check that out, see what's going on. Now that is unfortunate. We need to find out why this is giving us this particular problem. Because theoretically, this line and then here should give us something to work with. It should have ourselves a database that's sort of been initialized properly by that point. So let's do a reload, pass by this debugger, and for some reason this timeout, let me see if I get rid of the debugger if that behaves itself. Well, that seems fine. That seems fine. What I'd like to do now is drop a debugging statement in there and just see whether, if we look in application, whether the database that we're thinking is in here. So the migration test database, it's at version 1 and it's got nothing in it for some reason. Why? That I don't have an answer for. Why does it not have our stores in there? And this is odd, I guess, because we've sort of cleared that this thing does actually work based on how it behaves here. So we need to figure out why it's not working in this test scenario for us. Did I type something wrong? Migration test database. Well, this is probably as good of a reason as any to make it really clear that this is where this is getting its information from, and just check and see whether I've made a mistake. Well, I gotta say, this is the worst part of testing IndexedDB, is like just getting all of this to sort of line up correctly, because it's not a whole lot of fun when you're getting into this part of it. I wonder what would be the best way to test this. Or maybe it's because the closed connection is coming in too soon. That's a potential thing, I guess. Although it shouldn't be. Because let's check some assumptions here. Because when we have this whole song and dance about initializing the connection, so we have database upgrading, we have database ready, and then close connection, which I guess we should put the console log back on if it's not already on there. Database db.ts. Yeah, we should put ourselves a console log on here. We'll just chuck that in there and go database connection closing. let's roll with that. Just see where everything lines up in terms of timing. We'll remove that debugger statement just so it's not interfering, and we'll go from there. We've got database ready, database upgrading, database ready. We've got it going through all of these. The database is ready, and then the database connection is closing. But that's for test database? That's odd. Oh, that's so amateur, isn't it? So very, very amateur. Look at that. Right there. Alright, moving on. When the code you're writing is good and you're not looking at things properly, it turns out it's very easy to make mistakes like that. Alright, so we've got ourselves a DOM string list. So now we're looking a lot better. Now, what are we looking? We're missing stores. So if we do something like stores, that should be enough. Yeah. Okie dokie. So what we're looking at now is we just got to check whether all of those things are where they need to be. So we should be able to get that out of a check on db.const db equals ev.target.result. So we can do that, and then we can use the db, and in fact we can type that to IDB database. That'll help us a bit. So now we can check the object store names. Do I get an? We can get a contains. Very good. Okay. So maybe this will work. It might not work, but we'll see. So we'll expect it to contain authors and articles. Let's check that out. If you don't like that, object tested must be an array and a map. Okay. So yeah, these aren't actually an array. They're a DOM list. So we'll have to do it more like this, do a bit more old school. To be dot true. And we'll do the same for articles. And let's see how that behaves. Well, it got through it without crashing. Let's just see if we sort of break the test and we see what happens. Okay, so that's an interesting one because we've got the script error. I want to be able to do something different to that in order to sort of work out this testing. So what we'll probably be looking at is a try. Yeah, we'll do a try, catch E. We can reject there. We can also do our target result close, which is not a bad way to do it. And then if we get through all of that, then that means we can resolve true. So this will probably sort of set ourselves up. So we've got this try catch layer in here, and it means that these should bubble up in a way that I can read the test. Looks good to me. Expected false to be true, and we can probably line up which line that happened on. It's a bit unfortunate that it's not sort of in there completely, but that'll do, I guess. Yeah, that'll do for now. That said though, we do need to check if the indexes are in place, so it's probably better that we just try and get these stores and play with them and then go from there. So what are we looking for? What's next? I'm going to actually refer to some of the code here in order to get these items. So we need to get these object stores. And I think we can only get them when we open up a transaction, a read transaction. We still need to find out whether this stuff is here. So yeah, we're creating a transaction sort of like this, and then we're digging into that transaction to get the information we need. So I guess let's just do that, see what we end up with. So we'll create a db.transaction, and we'll call it authors. And we'll go const author store equals tx.object store authors. And I'll just do a console log on author store and see how much information we get with that. So we get our list of index names. We don't got one because authors don't have one, but I reckon if we did the same with articles, article store rather, I'll see if the transaction can actually accept both of them as well. So IDB transaction. Store names. Okay, yeah, we can do store names. So that should help us out. We'll just do this. And then we get both the stores that we need. So the article store and the author store. Okay. So here we've got some things that are behaving well, it seems. We've got this object store, we've got the key path, which is good, we can verify that. And we've also got the index names, and you can see that all through here for this DOM string list. So that pretty much gives us everything we need. So yeah, we just need to verify against it, and we're done with this test. And I might just test, see if say we reference the wrong thing, whether we get a decent error that we can read. Failed to execute transaction on IDB database. One of the specified object stores was not found. Okay, so that's as good a test as any. We'll be able to debug that quite simply if we end up with that. So we can roll with that and just finish up our tests in this sort of way. So we can expect author store dot keypath dot to equal ID, and we can expect the same out of article store. We can also expect article store dot index names actually we can go index. Let's just test what happens if we do author. We do a broken one. Let's just see what happens if we do a broken call to an index. Does it give us an error? What does it do? Failed to execute index. The specified index was not found. Okay, yeah, that works for us. We can nail it down to the line. 75, 43, it's close enough. Yeah, we'll be able to figure that one out. We might just see if Chai can give us some assertions on that. So something like expect not to throw or something like that. I think assertions are what I'm gonna have to look for here. I don't know if I can find the right thing for what I need there. So I'm just going to assume that we can probably narrow it down to what we're missing if we have a failure on this test. Because we will find out, okay, we don't have the particular thing that we're looking for, the particular author ID, publication date. We don't have the particular index that we're looking for. So that should be enough. We'll just roll with that. And that seems to work. That gives us add stores and indexes successfully. Alright, that works for me. Just give me one moment. Alrighty, back to things. So if we've got the stores and indexes added successfully now, that we can probably just get into our reading and writing. Yeah, I don't need to add any further tests for migrations. If we do have some more complexity, like eventually we'll have to have complexity for things like partial migrations and making sure it picks up properly with the next set of migrations, and we can do that pretty simply, but I don't want to worry about it just yet because we're still going to have to go back there and figure that stuff out. Eventually we're still going to have to spend some more time on this database layer to do that, so we can save those for next time. What we'll do is we'll just have data saving and data retrieval. And we'll just go from there. So before we test, we need our database ready to go. So this goes under the assumption that we've actually done everything that we need to. So, or rather, we've done all of the work that we needed to have a database and allow it to do all the things that we needed to do. So we should be able to essentially just take from one of these earlier tests and consider that the thing that will run right up front. And what we can potentially do is, rather than do the whole closing thing, we will do that after. So we'll go let db, we'll set db to be that, and I think I can do that, can't I? No. Where's database storage? It's up there. What are you talking about? Can't find namespace database storage. Can't seem to get the type. Just gonna have to deal with that and go grab it. It exports it as a type, so it looks more like this. There we go. Alright, so assign that there, and after everything, we'll roll up, we'll close the connection, and in a promise after that, we can delete the database. Database storage dot delete db, yeah, that's the one. And what I really should be doing is using schema.name for these. And in fact, I'll go through the rest of them and just make sure I'm making that association everywhere. Just so if I want to change it, I've only got a single point of control for all of these. Okay, 19. Okay, now this section should probably run without crashing, but it doesn't have any tests inside of it, so let's fix that. Is something going wrong here? Is it not compiling for me? Seems to be compiling. Okay, something's going wrong here, so we must not be, yeah, so we're not actually closing the database, so we need to do that. Good stuff, all done. Okay, and now we can save items successfully, but nothing's actually happening in there. So now we can start to bring in our actual database saves. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll make our first test be all the data that came in, just like this big promise all here. So I'm going to make an assumption that if we can go through all of this without a crash, then I think we are doing all right. We've got data, it's working as expected. Okay, and we can see there a little delay, so that 40 milliseconds seems like kind of promising in terms of what it needed to do. So we can save items successfully, and I'm not even going to do any assertions because our next test will test whether we can get these things. All of these things failing all at once will sort of give us an idea of whether something's wrong. So can retrieve single items successfully is what we'll look for. And in order to do that, I guess we can use db to return db.getByKey. And we've got the store name, authors. We'll grab the test item, which is going to be the first of all authors, like that. So we'll go test item.id, I believe it is, yep. So we'll do that. And then after that, we get our author, and we can run our exception from, not exception, but rather, what's the word that I'm looking for? We'll run our test from here. So we can go expect author to deep equal test item. Interesting because it looks like, oh no, it didn't lock up, but okay, that seemed to succeed. So what we need to do now is we need to maybe test it against something else. So what if we had something like object.assign test item, or rather test item, and we'll put something different on the full name. Okay, it really doesn't matter what it is, so let's just chuck it in there. So with that break, we'll see if we had things behave as accepted. So expected this to deeply equal this this object over here, which was not equal. So that looks like our test is working there. So that's great, and maybe we should just do a couple more, just for good measure. So we can do the same from articles, and we'll get test item 2, or we'll go test author and test article. That should do it for us. This is just the way it is with test writing. It's not really a lot of new code or anything like that, but we've got to do it, because if we've got the test here, then it's going to assure that down the track, if we make some mistakes, we're gonna see it in our tests, and we sort of do need to have that kind of coverage. So let's see if that works. 0 in articles could not be found. All articles. We did have a data not found error, and I think it's important that we do test that that does actually work. So let's do exactly that. So throws data not found error on key not found. That's what we're looking for. So we'll just make up a random key, and we'll just make sure that that error comes back. And I don't really need to promise all on this one. Okay, so what are we looking for here? We're looking for a get by key from authors, and this time it's going to be a key that does not exist, something like this. The first way we roll, we've got this throws data not key, and it does fail to execute the transaction because one of the object stores was not found, because I just made a big old typo. Let's roll that again. So 1, 2, 3 in authors could not be found, but we actually do want to check if that does work. So what we instead want is something like a rejection, something like new error. If it's successful, that means something went wrong, right? So new error, expected not to find anything. However, found author. What's the best way to write this in? Okay, so that's the first thing. Like, that is a problem. So we'll throw a new error inside there, and then we can go on to what about the error that comes back. So the error that comes back. So if we have an error, that's actually a good thing, right? We want to then go, all right, sweet. That's exactly what we want. So if we need to get the type of this particular thing. Where does this type come from though? And that comes from routing, and that will eventually change. But for now, we'll just grab it from routing. So if type of or maybe expect the error object to be wonder if this would do it for us. Expecting that to be, yeah, this chai assertion thing. Let's see how it actually wants me to put something like this. Maybe that's what we're looking for. Just chuck that in like that, just to force the type system to accept what I'm giving it. Type to lowercase is not a function. That's interesting. Oh, it needs to be a type string. Okay, how about that? All right, let's try that. Does that work? Expected data not found error 123 in authors could not be found to be a okay. I do wonder if I need to fix up my types here. So if we're looking at routing.ts, because this is a problem we had a while ago, right? Like where our data not found stuff, while it was meant to extend error, and its public name is I think for now maybe we can do something like this and just call it a day. Will that work? To equal, maybe that's, yeah, that'll work. That'll work. So if I change that to dat not found error, yep, okay, I'm happy with that. Like, it could be better. Like, we could have a proper type system instead of doing this by strings, but that'll do for now. All right, so if we can retrieve single item successfully, that's good. At this point, we probably just want to test out our query system, and then we're kind of happy. We got things working there, and now we go to our queries. Now, keep in mind that our author.ts or article.ts is randomly generated. This is important consideration because it does mean that we're not always going to have all the things that we want to because of this randomization. Although actually it's walking, so it shouldn't actually be too bad. But I might just avoid doing any sort of particular queries or anything like that. We'll just none of the date times, nothing that could be a bit flaky, and we'll just stick with some simple ones like all the article writers and stuff like that. So we'll pretty much steal that from our entry page, or our author page rather. That's the one we got right here. So let's go. It can retrieve a query successfully. And we'll do this by running the query and then just verifying that all the things that came back are actually conforming to that query. So we'll do something like this, create a query, and it's author ID and it's lookup, and we'll make the author ID say 0, get rid of that. And now we can just run our query. Context.db.query. So that should just be something like return db.query, I believe. Yep. And then we'll just chuck the query object in there. The articles that have come back. And we just need to verify that essentially all of them match this this expectation that we have. So we can do an articles.forEach article. And we expect article dot author ID to equal that should be sufficient to test that query for now. So if I change that, we should be able to break the test, which you can see right there, expected 0 to equal 4, which it does not, so we are good there. So now we have ourselves some data saving retrieval. Now we have some other things that we could be doing. So if we look at the index.ts, that's not actually what I was looking for, query.ts. So here we've got some isolated functions that we could potentially test as well, and just make sure that we're getting back certain values when we give it particular filter definitions. So it's probably not the worst thing in the world to do. Just do some basics here. We won't cover it all. We'll just get a little bit in there. So I don't think I need to even set up a database for this one, so that's good. Yeah, we'll go for key range filters as our first port of call, so we'll need to import them up here. Coming from query, I believe, and we will eventually test apply JavaScript filter, but I feel like we want to do more with it before we really worry about testing it too heavily. But this will form a good place for us to test our ideas. We can sort of use this for some test-driven development. So we're writing usage code. I mean, we'll probably still write usage code in the main app to sort of test our ideas, but once we know what we want our ideas to be, then we can use full test-driven development to sort of follow that on with actually just building up our test base as we're experimenting with the code itself. Anyway, let's crack on. So it I mean, we could probably create some fairly reliable filter definitions here. So if we say equals filter def, and we make that up with key is name lookup equals, and what else we got? Exclude is not necessary, so for all of these ones we can actually just ditch the exclude because that's really only for a JavaScript filter. And then after that we'll just have a value of Joe will do, won't it? Okay, so it creates only key ranges for equals filter. So here we're looking at just sort of going through each of these different cases and asserting that what we get back is what we expect. So if we every time we just develop this key range using create key range for filter, and it's only requiring the filter def, so we can just give it equals filter def, and then after that we should be able to just run some expectations on it. So this key range, which we've got the type of, so we've got lower open. Yeah, so lower is a value, so we expect lower open to equal value equals filter def dot value. And you may remember when we last passed over this that the only key value, what that does is that that also does the upper. So both of them equal the same thing. That's sort of what's meant to happen with that one. So let's just test that actually works. Sure does. And what if we were to say, this is meant to be something else? I'm pretty sure we'll end up with a failure there. Yeah, Joe to equal, blah, 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 blah. So that's good. All right, so let's carry on with our next couple of filter defs. So GT filter def. And we can pretty much just go through the lot of them and get them all done and dusted right now. We've got LT, we've got GTE and LTE. That gives us greater than, less than, greater than and equals, and less than and equals. And we don't need to play with the keys because the keys are actually irrelevant when we create key ranges, if you haven't noticed. Okay, so only key range, and what's this one? Well, this is meant to be lower bound key range for greater than. And I believe, so it's going to be the lower bound is equal to that, and we expect the upper bound to be equal to null, I believe. It's either going to be null or undefined. And then the lower bound is true if it's GTE. So lower bound should actually equal false. Oh, lower open rather. Actually, let me check the spec for this one because I'm probably going to forget how it's all implemented here. Because I've actually got all of the things that they're meant to be in a list right here. So greater than, yes, upper bound, true. And whether it's open. Yeah, so it's open, and it's closed if it's equal, right? So lower open should be actually true. And the upper shouldn't even have a range, but let's just test that, see if my assumptions are correct here. So expect false to equal true. Lower open. Oh, my bad. Yep. So it should be true. Back to Joe to equal null on upper. That's interesting. Oh, I've got equals filter there. That would explain everything. All right, now we've got our things together. Expect undefined to equal null. So it's an undefined in there. Works for me. Okay, I'm happy with that definition. Now I just got to smash through the remaining, and we'll probably call it at that point because it's almost an hour. And I feel like we're probably going to settle down with how much we need to test. Like we've got some decent testing in place, and I'm going to be doing some rework in the routing layer soon because we need to make a better API for all of that if we're actually going to build a proper app. So that's not all completely done there. We'll call it lower bound open and lower bound closed because lower open is going to be false in this case, and we'll see if that works. Expected true to equal false. Huh? Maybe I'm misinterpreting here. So it's false. Alright. I'm making that mistake again. I need to stop doing that. Turns out when you talk, you make a lot more mistakes. You're not paying nearly as much attention as you should be. Anyway, let's get through to our other bits and pieces. So now we're looking at our upper bounds. Oopsie daisy. And we'll put them in. We'll change GT to LT. Oops, didn't get it. Didn't like it. I should have done GT and then LT. There we go. We'll do the same here. All right, now we're looking at changing lower to upper and upper to lower. Probably don't know which one was going to be quicker, so I'll just do it. Now, hopefully those all work. And then we'll invalidate them. Expect undefined to equal expected undefined to equal Joe. The upper is open. Upper bound closed. What have I done wrong here? So less than equals upper bound should be defined value. I see. I've got my problem is either with my tests or with my code, and my problem is with my tests. So if we change that spec, should be good to go. That's good because it tested whether it invalidated, which it did. So that's good. We've got some tests there. Let's back up and see if all of our tests are still running. Coming through quite quickly. It's quite nice. So I think we can have a look at our app and our test coverage now. We've done a lot of our persistence layer, which is good. We've got our localized layer, and we can probably do our index, starting doing some tests for our index layer, but I'll hit that when I feel a need to. What I might do now is see if Mocha has some support for coverage. Let's see if Istanbul can do it for us. That's looking nice. So the big thing that's going to be a deal breaker for us is if we need to run it in Node only to get our test coverage, because obviously we're going to have issues the moment we depend on an IndexedDB. So yeah, we can't actually run our tests in Node anymore. We might have to figure out a way to get past that, possibly by tagging certain files and saying, no, these are browser only tests. But for the moment, let's have a look and see if we can find NYC command line client for Istanbul works well. Okay, so it's probably going to be a bit harder than we expect, simply because we want to run it in the browser, and we don't have that yet. So yeah, we're gonna have to do some lateral thinking to get around that one, to get our proper code coverage results. For the moment, I'm gonna take a brief look, and we're just gonna look into Mocha and maybe make some plans for what we're gonna do next for our tests. Because I mean, I'm pretty happy with our effort so far. This is pretty good. We've got some decent amount of tests for the amount of code that we've written. So I'm not too upset about where we're at, where we've gotten up to. Now let's have a look and see if we can do test tagging or something like that. Multiple calls. Can we filter tests? And potentially what we can do is literally put browser, like browser.test or something, like browser-test in it, and maybe that would be enough, because if we like, it's either a browser test or it's a normal test. Yeah, that could be really straightforward. In fact, I'm going to have a crack at that and just see how it plays out, because maybe that's all we really need to do. So what do we got here? So it's pretty much the persistence layer that depends on key value storage. These are the tests that we need a browser. So let's say we rename this persistent key value storage, and we just put browser test in it. And then we rename this one. And then we'll do the same thing for database storage. Okay, so theoretically everything else should work, because even localize, even the international, the INTL layer does work in outside in Node. It's been ported to Node. So if we do that, we can do this, and that works, which is good. And then we just need the testing layer, the Webpack file. So that would be test runner. This bad boy needs to either match test or test runner, and since this is a regex, and I always forget my regexes, so, or rather I always forget that there are multiple dialects of regexes, so sometimes I just forget the different groups. So I've got what do I want? I want alternation quantifier. I don't want a quantifier. I want two different words. I don't want character sets either. I want to match either browser test or browser test. Yeah, I want to match either browser test or browser. And in fact, that's probably good. So I can just put in browser. I can make a capture group here, and it can be optional. So it'll be something like this. So if we've got ourselves a group, a capture group, and it's optional, that's what I believe our question mark is for us. Optional, yeah. Then that should pick up what we need it to pick up. This hasn't got upset, so maybe we're okay. And we do have our database storage and our persistent key value storage. And then we look here, and we've got our node test running. So this is sort of good, because it means that like if we only need to run in Node, then we can do that, and we can just sort of have just a little bit of specification that allows us to sort of nail down particular ones that do absolutely need to run in the browser. Yeah, it's not great. Well, I mean, it's fine. Does the job, which is all we needed to do. Right, so let's carry on. and finish off that commit. We've done our dash, and we'll pick up next time with cleaning up our router so that we can develop in earnest. Right, day 20. So finish first pass of testing for, what am I talking about? Finish the first pass of testing for IndexedDB. That's pretty much it. We'll tag it for day 20. And that'll pretty much call it. So as per usual, if you want to see any of this code, you can find it all at github.com/weareoffcider/weekends web app. You can find it right here. And that'll show our code that we just pushed up there. You can see that commit right there. So you can pull down the code, play with it yourself, see how you go. That's pretty much gonna be the end of it for today. So a good 3 days worth of testing of the platform layer. Hopefully that's given you an idea of what testing's like. We'll be sort of more trying to work it into our gradual progress rather than making it something that we do in a big heap like we did here this week. But yeah, that's pretty much where we're at, and we'll carry on to working towards something that we can actually use next week. So I haven't fully decided what it is that I'm going to be working on. I'm mindful of the fact that I've been doing an awful lot of JavaScript and absolutely no CSS, and I would kind of like to rectify that. So we might start investigating what we can do to render in a better way than what we have right now, because at the moment we render and it's straight to string, and it's not really using any particular technology that does the work for us. I think we need to do better than that, and we need to figure out what we're going to use. And I don't think I've made any secret that I'll probably use React or something like that, but if there's an alternative out there, we'll be able to use that, because the way we build this app, it's going to make it pretty easy for us to drop in new front-end frameworks or view layers or whatever you want to do to render within this sort of container system that we're building out of our renderer. But we'll talk more about that next time we get into things. That's pretty much it from me. So thanks for watching. See you next time.